We are on it now.
Okay, excellent. We have a short delay. Tulia is doing her wonderful 12s work, and she may go a little further than her original 11:15 time frame, and that's good. It means that she's adding on to her wonderful presentation, and maybe people are really plugging in, and maybe they have questions and answers or things to add. So we can sort of skip through a few things. And you know what I'd like to do, Michael? I would like to present one of my longer meditative animations for the next, like, maybe 10 or 12 minutes, where Tulia is sort of wrapping up, so that those who come can see what it might look like to see a longer rendition or version of some of these shorties, some of these short animations that I've presented here. So I think I can do that. Or should I have you do it, Michael? Can you go to my Lightweaver site and pull up the very
shining on their way.
Yes.
yeah, and just play the top one,
Let me see.
and we'll watch that until Tulia's off. And all of you lovely people who've come on time or even come early, it'll be really good, because these longer versions are actually more powerful than these short ones are, because they have more.
Sorry.
We'll have to mute her, but maybe she's ending. So, or,
It's ending almost right now. They're
oh,
umming
okay.
now.
Okay, then disregard any of my comments.
But I want to
But
remind everybody that when other people come, that we do have
yes,
those longer videos up, plus your
yes,
autobiography.
yes. Excellent. So to those who have come to this wonderful Zoom share that we're going to have, I would like to extend my appreciation once again to the Moya University for this opportunity, and special mention and assistance to Mikey, BL, Rose, and others, as well as their moral support, because all of them have demonstrated years of service work and a willingness to take their precious time and help us make these occult and esoteric videos and presentations. And last but not least, all of you, wonderful participants who have taken your valuable time to bring to the forefront of your lives these important ageless wisdom teachings, and how they can be used to further not simply your own development, which is important, but the idea of group development and the planetary life. Because we always have to keep into consideration that we are cells within this great being called the planetary logos, and her progress is dependent not only on cosmic forces of which we know very little, but our contribution, however humble it may seem, when worked through a group, becomes very powerful. So thank you all very much for coming. Okay, so get my keyboard here. Let's see. Okay, are we good, Mike, on review? It's up and running.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, today we're going to do some review work on earlier presentations. I know the last time we met that I really only sort of got halfway through, and that was fine because there was so much interaction and comments and participation. It just felt right to sort of go with that. And we're going to do a lot of that also today. But we're going to once again reaffirm what is sacred geometry, how it relates to the macrocosm and the microcosm. And we're really going to bore down on this idea of the polyhedra. And then we're going to go into the origin of sacred geometry. In other words, where does it come from? Is it something somebody hatched up, or does it have a sacred background or basis that we should be familiar with? And Michael was very kind to post up on my Lightweaver site some of the longer animations that I've done that are similar to what you've seen here, only they're not just 2, 3, or 4 minutes long. They can be as long as 25 minutes. So if you like and appreciate and sort of vibe to these shorties that I've been sharing for actually quite some years now, you are going to love the longer extended versions where your meditations can often be deeper and more intimate. So, Michael, could you put that link in the chat box or wherever it would be more visible?
Yeah, it's posted.
Okay, thank you. And one of the things that we're going to explore is that just as color and sound in their different variations that I have asked all of you to study in relationship to your different rays, this is equally true of geometry. And when we do these little meditations and share these symbols, I want you to be open and feel any impressions that you get. It can be a word, it can be a color, it can be an observation of the geometric polyhedra that I'm sharing, but it might morph quickly into something else. So in other words, let's make this organic. The technicalities are only important as a foundation. Awakening your psychic sensitivity on a higher level and your intuition is of paramount importance. So this idea of feeling is more of an intuitive activity and what is normally found or associated with the astral plane. But actually this high psychic sensitivity is the upper subplanes of the astral that is the crossover into the Buddhic planes. Because when you look at the descent of energy along the second ray line, you see it's monadic, Buddhic, astral, and those are the three main rays, 2, 4, 6, that will be most dominant with people who come and study with us in these Zoom meetings. Again, with also a strong inclination to the other rays of 1, 3, 5, 7. Excellent. Okay, what is sacred geometry? And again, this is a little repetitive, but we're going to come at this idea of sacred geometry from some slightly different ways. But again, we must have a foundation for that to be successful. All sacred geometry is based on some combination of the Platonic solids. Even spheres and vortices, as we have demonstrated and will continue to demonstrate, are composed of some variation of these polyhedral shapes. Energy starts its descent from higher monadic levels, called by DK as the fire mist, then descends as a flaming sun, and eventually travels down through the different levels as liquid electrical and magnetic streams. As this energy descends into the lower subplanes of the material world, it begins to occultly cool and solidify into more concrete geometric forms. This is what is called sacred geometry. But we have to keep in mind that these Platonic solids that we're looking at here, when seen or experienced on the inner planes, are semi-permeable membranes of energy and force that are in motion. Yes, they do conform to these Platonic solids that you're seeing here, with our good and illustrious friend Plato, no doubt, in the middle, symbolizing the great five-pointed star of all white magicians. And they are in a constant state of motion, so that they can not only be exhibited at the same time, but they can interface and fuse one into the other. And I shared this, I think, the last time we came together, but we're going to share it one more time. So here is a quick rundown of the different rays on the left, and then certain symbols on the right. And there's many, many more. And there are always variations that you find when you study alchemy and white magic and the ageless wisdom teachings, but they pretty much conform to what you're seeing here. So don't be surprised or don't be dismayed if you're visualizing one of these symbols and all of a sudden another symbol appears. These are only, to go into like a Freudian analogy, they're like just the tip of the symbolic iceberg that's above the waterline of our perceptions as we look at these symbols here. But once your intention is strong enough and your focus powerful, it becomes a doorway, like a Jacob's ladder. And these two-dimensional images become three-dimensional. So let's explore the icosahedron, which is a ray 2 symbol, and the tetrahedron, which is a ray 3 symbol, and see them nesting one within the other, as well as all the additional ones. So let me bring up that video. And here it is seen, all the polyhedra, all nesting one within the other. And to give even greater detail and a more intuitive understanding, let's watch this unfold and then back into itself in motion. When I was younger, I had 3 older brothers that were all students of white magic and alchemy and all kinds of different esoteric programs and research. And they were always talking about the Platonic solids. But I have to admit, I had a hard time visualizing how they could interface. And unless you have a really very advanced visualization quality, it's difficult to see how they can nest one within the other. And it's like an onion. You peel away one tetrahedron, one polyhedron, and there's another one. And then you peel another one away, and then there's another one behind that. And if that's not profound and impressive in itself, when you see them in animations, all sort of gyrating and palpitating, it's even more evocative. And again, what we're attempting to do here is to invoke the intuition, and that is done because there's an assumption that everyone here, to a greater or lesser degree, has spent years and years and years on the ageless wisdom teachings, either from the Trans-Himalayan Mahayana tradition or other traditions, because in essence, they're all saying the same thing. You study the Sufis, you study the Hindus, the Buddhists. When you go right to the core, you will find geometry. Okay. Let's take a quotation by the Tibetan master
Wayne,
that, yes,
sorry. Asha says, really cool nesting video. Is there a 3D toy that has this nest, please?
is there a 3D toy that has,
And Asha, you might want to clarify, do you actually mean a toy? You've got it all caps. So is that an acronym or is it just a toy?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
we can
Yeah.
now?
Look, like, like when I was a child, I had these Russian dolls and I used
Yes.
to love playing with them. Is there a
Yes.
toy like this that I could give to my grandkids or something that,
Oh, yes, there
that you could
are.
actually, there are?
Oh, yes. And I'll get back with you. And you're actually going to see some done up in computer graphics, but I think you're referring to the actual physical.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
played for hours and hours with those little Russian dolls. It was just fascinating to me as a child.
Well, it is
Yeah,
because it shows how little people, and it doesn't have to be people, it can be just almost anything, can nest one within the other. And what we're doing here is we're seeing that principle through transparency. And it gives you a multi-dimensional insight into how they all work together. Yes, maybe one is more expressive or dominant at one time in your life, but at another time, it can be another one. And yet that linkage may not be, that linkage may be organic and not cut and dried. Okay, one day I looked at the dodecahedron, the next day I looked at the square, and yes, you can ascertain a lot by isolating them. But at some point, when the mind becomes intuitive, you see through things. Things become transparent. And this isn't just some low astral plane phenomena. This is the inner worlds in their different dimensions that are also on the mental plane as well as the high astral.
Yeah, I just
So,
wanted to share that once I wrote a paper many years ago called The Imagination of the Scientist. And often
yes.
these great people, you know, the guy who Kekulé with the benzene ring and everything, and
Oh, yes.
they were often sickly children and often playing with wooden blocks and pieces at home and a lot of alone time. And, you know, and that sort of somehow excited their imagination and intuition. And, you know, so that was play. It was play, but it was educational. And often they were sickly children that would just have a lot of alone time with the
It
blocks and
gave them the,
building. Yeah.
well, that's one of the reasons, if you've studied Rudolf Steiner and his
Yeah,
wonderful
I'm very familiar with that. I'm very familiar with
contributions,
Waldorf education. Yeah.
they don't overwhelm the student with too much mental activity, and that sort of develops organically and naturally. But they go out in the garden, they just have a whole way of not just thinking but feeling and sensing and developing psychic abilities that may not be verbalized in their curriculum because they want to be accepted in the mainstream. But when you study Rudolf Steiner, he was a very advanced initiate, and he had a whole different look, a way of looking at education. So if somebody's born with some physical limitation, it may prove later in life to be the very thing they needed to experience to bring out another side of their creativity. And this is, if you study autobiographies and biographies of famous people, you will find this is very common. And
Right.
it may be different limitations. It may be parents that are so far out, you just had to get out of that family and early in life start your own program. And you say, oh, they were terrible parents. But then later on, you realize, look, I loved them. They had their problems. They couldn't work it out. It drove me to a better life. I don't want that. I don't want that conflict. Excellent. Well, thank you, Asha.
Thank
And,
you.
and let's move along a little bit, and then we'll have time for question, answers, and sharing. So, would somebody like to read this short version of DK from Letters and Occult Meditation? Because it relates to geometry and the individual person. And this is sort of the micro side of this presentation. And then we're going to intermittently go into the macrocosmic side, which is where do all these higher forms come from? Any volunteers to read this?
Yes, Asha, go ahead, please.
This morning, I would touch on the matter of egoic alignment again, showing you, under the law of correspondences, the universal application. It lies based in geometry or in figures and numbers. Each life that the personality leads is, at the close, represented by some geometrical figure, some utilization of the lines of the cube, and their demonstration in a form of some kind. Intricate and uncertain in outline, and crude in design are the forms of the earlier lives. Definite and clear in outline are the forms built by the average advanced man of this generation. But when he steps upon the path of discipleship, the purpose consists in merging all these many lines into one line, and gradually this consummation is achieved. The master is he who has blended all the lines of fivefold development, first into the three and then into the one.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We discussed this in our last presentation, but it is such a profound quotation. And when we meet people, our auric field interfaces with their auric field. Sometimes we're aware of this, sometimes we're not aware of this. And the disciple is one who becomes aware of it and actually utilizes it as a serving technique. And just as your auric fields, all your different bodies that we've researched and shared, the six-fold ray chart that you express with its unique colors and notes that affect people, also have a geometric parallel. And just as your auric colors and notes interface with the vibrational frequencies of their notes, and it can bring them up if you're taking a position as a guide or a teacher or a facilitator. And this is what really advanced people do. They can do it to a whole audience. They can send out these quote unquote gift waves that ensoul a whole group of people in a large auditorium, because they've been doing this for lifetimes. They know the techniques, and these are the mysteries that we have to unlock, because it's not only a way to inspire ourselves and progress along the path, but it is so creative when you get into esoteric healing. Anyone who has background in esoteric healing, particularly along the lines of the Bailey material, knows there's magnetic healing and radiatory healing. And I'm not going to go into those two any more than say one precedes the other. In one, the magnetic has a lot of beautiful, powerful techniques with triangles and moving energy around. And it works very well when you practice and you understand the laws that govern the inner energies working on the physical. But radiatory healing is much more powerful. You don't have to do all these triangles and these preparatory uh, alignments. You just walk in to a room and your vibrational quality affects those that are within the vicinity. And your auric field extends not only up into the unknown or the beauty of these higher levels, but it extends horizontally as it pours down through your vehicles and radiates out. So there's a practical side to all this that we hopefully will explore, not fully here, but as we move along. Okay, now here's the icosahedron, which relates to the great second ray of love wisdom. Some of these images of the polyhedra, they don't have the correct colors. Now this one is a closer approximation of that great second ray, indigo blue esoterically and lighter blue exoterically. But when the second ray begins to bleed or blend into the third ray, not only through geometry, but through color, what happens is that the facets can go from indigo to light blue to like aqua or turquoise, where there's a little bit of blue or a little more green in that second or third ray. And you're going to see this visually in the upcoming videos. So how do these geometric forms face? We saw a demonstration of it in a few clicks back, but there's additional animations that make it even more intimate. And that is what we're striving for here, is intimacy. If you come here and just leave with a lot of tidbits of information in your lower mind, there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, I will have failed in a certain way, because those who have come to these Zoom meetings, in my opinion, are ready for more than just information. Okay, now, how many can remember about a year ago, we studied triangles, and we could see that triangles were the building blocks of the whole universe, whether it's organically in nature or on the inner planes, and that these forms are built by intention, by you deliberately and with willful intent saying, okay, maybe I'm surrounded or ensouled by this particular form, but I'm going to extend those triangles of light out and contact through service more areas on the planet that need rehabilitation and healing. Okay. Someone else like to read this? Okay, I'll read it. This is the Star of Life, and I'm going to read the whole thing because it warrants. It's just such mental poetry. The etheric webs of the sacred planets are largely triangles, whilst that of the sun is that of interlaced circles. The effort on Earth today, as seen by the planetary logos, is to bring about a transformation of the web of the planet and thus slowly change the existing squares into triangles. This is done by the creation of division, by the application of the law of separation, but also by the recognition in consciousness of duality, the application of directed motion, and the appearance of two triangles in the place of one square, diagonally creating a line between 2 points of a square. When this has taken place, the perceiving consciousness recognizes identity and the rule of the square is ended. These words were once spoken by me by an ancient seer who bisected the square esoterically, thus forming two triangles and uniting them in a fresh manifestation to form a star of life. Ponder on this. There are many stars of life, but the one that the Tibetan is referring to here is one of the key characteristics of the second ray disciple. And that's not to say they can't have many secondary attributes that their star of life interfaces with, but it will be predominantly, it will look like this. Imagine this is your auric field. This is the group that you work with. This is the planetary logos. Surrounded by this grid, in the background, you have the Buddhic triangles, which brings love, humanity having the second ray, the Buddhic quality of love is so important. And then on the face, or in the front, or the outer periphery, I should say, you have the second ray of love, wisdom. And right in the center of all those triangles, you can see when triangles are bisected, and they can be bisected more than one time. They can be bisected into this star of life, and it's very, very powerful. It's the symbol of the modern state of Israel, the Morgan David cliff. It's the seal of Solomon. And what it does is it symbolizes the interface of a higher triangle of forces with a lower triangle of forces. And what is that? It's the monad, which expresses Atma at the top part of the triangle, Budai to the left, and Manas to the right. And then when those three monadic principles pass through the soul into your personality, you will reflect those three qualities through your three lower instruments, which is the lower mind, the astral body, and the physical etheric. Now, when we move to the next symbol, we can see that same star of life in the background in white, and you can see how you can actually see a square there. If you sort of, without straining, this is the problem with the lower mind. When you strain to see something, you block the ability to see it. I understand this is a contradictions in terms, but it's very much real. And then in the center, you see the dodecahedron. And we saw that earlier in those glass cased polyhedra, all interfacing one within the other, nesting like the Russian dolls. Well, here's like another example of that. So the dodecahedron relates to the astral and Buddhic plane, and then the other relates to the second ray. They both have second ray relationships. And let me, when you get into the flower of life, there's also some wonderful symbology and colors. Now, here's some variations, because we're going to see some animations, and it's important that you see what you're going to see. There's probably many more variations of the icosahedron that we've been sort of showcasing. There it is on the upper left, top one in green by itself. But then if you go to the next image to the right, you see it's called truncated icosahedron. Okay, well, what's truncated mean? Truncated means you're cutting off any points, cutting off any, like on a star that has sharp points. Truncated means removing those. So those are really in essence the same, but they may be the same undergoing different regenerative patterns. Okay, down at the bottom, you have what is called icosahedron. Then number 6, it is the I can't read this without my glasses, icosahedron, another one, and then a truncated icosahedron. So these 5 are all basically variations of that first one on the top left. So when we get into the animations and you say to yourself, well, how did we go from the polyhedra as stationary geometric objects in real time that I can pick up off a table and put in my hand to this multidimensional animation? Okay, in the next image, we're going to see the icosahedron and the dodecahedron merging together. No sound. They look different. They're two different types of polyhedra, but look how they slip irresistibly into each other. Very, very simple demonstration, but very powerful. And with the yellow triangles and the blue triangles, you once again are dealing with a second ray in fourth ray, and primarily the Budai and the great second ray of love wisdom. Okay, now.
Would you run that again, please, Duane?
Absolutely. Okay, I may have to do something a little different here. Maybe go back a slide or two because it's been programmed to be automatic. Okay, so let's try this. See, like logic might tell you if you're looking at those two independent objects, that they have no relationship to each other. They're different. They're totally different. But if you, through computer graphics, the wonder and the expansion of the imagination through computer graphics, you can see how it can fuse and it can become one object that's both the dodecahedron and the tetrahedron. Okay, now we're going to make a slight excursion away from the main theme here, but still it's relative, and it comes from Agni Yoga. And I bet that 95% of everybody who comes into this Zoom room has been exposed to the raw-rich Agni Yoga material. And what I want to share here is the emphasis that the Agni Yoga teachings give to geometry, and particularly the dodecahedron, which I am convinced is a bridge between the astral and Buddhic plane. And what does Agni Yoga say, 361? The combination of two dodecahedrons is useful for promoting the rhythm of fire. And when you study the Master M through Roerich, Agni Yoga is all about fire. And we're going to really delve into that in future presentations and show the similarity but distinct difference between Raja Yoga, which has been used by advanced yogis for thousands and thousands of years, very successfully, is now merging with a new yoga called Agni Yoga, the yoga of fire, and it's just all about initiation. It assumes that you have good intentions. The Agni Yoga teachings assume that you've done the preparatory work of purification to a large degree. And that will be a very exciting addition to what we're doing. Okay, so then at the bottom, we see a combination of two dodecahedrons, one superimposed over the other. And again, without computer graphics, or I should say Photoshop in this case, it's a little hard to see how two dodecahedrons can fuse together. Now, that's not to say I've totally captured what Master M is sharing here with the two dodecahedrons. Maybe they could be arranged differently in another creative way that's just as powerful or even more powerful. So it's wonderful to be able to, it is like playing with Russian dolls when you get into the esoteric and the occult, but on mental levels and on high astral levels. And it's very creative, and it really does call to us. Okay, I'm going to show 2 more images, and then we're going to be open for questions and any shares. And I apologize for going so long without doing that, but I wanted to give a good foundation. Okay, now here's multiple, this is something I did, multiple dodecahedrons nesting within each other. And it's 3, 4 dodecahedrons. And what is at the very center? The point within the center, which is the monad. In other words, the most advanced symbol is just a point within a circle. It's sort of the know-nothing point where everything emanates in potentiality. And then you have, when you look at this image, you see that etherically there's all these webs, because that's the 7th ray. It's finally, all these higher dimensions have grounded themselves in this grid. And even though we talk about triangles, triangles can be very organic. Sounds like a contradiction, but we're going to explore that. And then this last image right here. Now, this is something that I actually did. I made this up. And I arranged in a stellated configuration, and a stellated dodecahedron simply means that the points are tapered. Truncated means they're cut off. Stellated means that they're elongated to a sharp point. And there are many other technical definitions that I'm not going to go into, but those are the 2 primarily ones that I use. And Dana House, who may be with us today, who's a wonderful, amazing crystal bowl musician, as well as advanced gong baths, she has that, and she displays it when she does her presentations. And it's a symbol of the Buddhic plane, the high astral Buddhic, only it's not embryonic, it's radiating out because of the stellation, the sharp points. Is Dana here today? Just by the way, she's always doing presentations, so she may not be here.
Yes, I think
But
she is.
thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you, Dana.
I'm right here. I'm right here. I'm the one who asked for you to repeat the video.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I
It's all right.
didn't
No problem.
recognize your voice, and must be other voices in my head talking to me at the same time. Okay, so now we're going to open this up, and we'll take it to another point after we discuss and share. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, we have lots of comments. Diana says, building Metatron, you can identify the 5 sacred solids, and she added an image of that.
Excellent. Can we see it? Do I have to share? What do I do?
You should be able to download it and then see it. Can you do that?
Michael, are you still with us?
Yeah,
This is
if
where
people want to view it, they can download it just by clicking on it.
Okay,
Um,
let's do that. Let's do that. My presentations are so fragile technically. If I do anything out of the ordinary, it'll implode on me.
And Greg has an image that he posted too, so people can do the same thing with that.
Excellent. Rose is pulling him up for me right now. And I appreciate that.
Okay, while that's going on, Magda says for anthro.
Okay, I see that. Variations. Beautiful. Excellent. So everybody download those, because it's even an extension of what I'm sharing. And that's what we want to do. We want to make this. Yep. Okay. And she has a description of what it is that she's attempting to share. Okay, excellent.
And then
So,
Magda says for I think she means philosophers, Steiner was the last Rosicrucian master. Path 3, Maha Chohan, the Lord of Civilization Master R. Christian Rosenkreuz, screen. Anthrop Safi has developed, as you said, mostly the philosophical, educational, biodynamics, eurythma, and medical aspects of Steiner's teaching. Unfortunately, the esoteric school never got to second class when Rudolf Steiner was poisoned and his Gerdianium temple burned down, both in, she said 2024, but then she corrected that to 1924.
well, thank you for that history. And I have been somewhat disappointed in some of the Waldorf, some of the uh, anthroposophy groups that, particularly during this last pandemic, when COVID was rampant, Rudolf Steiner has some clear statements, and I'm not going to uh, go off on a tangent here, but it's worth reviewing about how to deal with pandemics and viruses from his point of view as a master or a third degree initiate. I don't know what his standing was, but I can tell you it was very advanced. And I was so disappointed when I went to some Zoom meetings that were put on in Europe that just completely glossed over all of his stuff on vaccines. And I think people should be informed that there are there are different opinions about uh, taking vaccines or other medications. But anyway, let's get back. Any additional comments that people want to share here?
Yes, a number of them. Okay, so Heliosol asked Magda where I can find the biography of Steiner, and Michael Crow put the Wikipedia for Rudolf Steiner link in there.
Excellent,
So
excellent.
that's
That's,
there. Um,
that would be the answer. Thank you so much, Michael.
Louise says beautiful, and Magda says the problem with getting to know Herr Dr. Steiner are the division happened between anthroposophy and theosophy and the internal divisions after his killing. His esoteric teachings have been sabotaged, and just a few anthroposophers, I'm sorry, I'm butchering that, know the depth of the connections between Steiner and Nazi happenings.
I've never heard any relationship between Steiner and the Nazis.
Duane, may I speak? It's Magda.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Do you
You're
hear
on.
me? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I wanted to thank you for bringing that up about the vaccines thing and about the Waldorf schools, because you're perfectly right. As I was trying to say in the comments, all the artistical and educational, all the Waldorf school in all these decades have been watered down and sabotaged as well. So you're right. 4 years ago, Steiner was the only philosopher and esoteric person that prophesied exactly what happened in 2019 with the COVID psyop. And even then, we anthroposophists, divided even more and more and more, because most of the actual anthroposophers are just not into the Michael school, so the Rosicrucian school. So my master is Steiner, but I was brought into your groups, theosophical groups, because you are the only ones bringing out in the sciences of the spirit, in the spirit sciences. You're the only ones bringing forth all these studies, these technical studies, these esoteric studies, and because there is nowhere to find them anymore in anthroposophy. So for me, it's kind of because DK is my master too, is kind of a a reunion of theosophy and anthroposophy that some of us know what happened, and that's why bringing back all this, the last two currents, the most advanced two currents in story and time, back together is a bring success. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. I would say this, Michael, if you want to put in the link to my website, you'll find that I have written commentaries on this subject, and it would be of value for some to read and to get different points of view, because what I have done is I have gone through systematically, it took me 2 years, and get all the key insights and quotes by Alice Bailey on the value or dangers of vaccines, Agni Yoga with Master M, Rudolf Steiner, Aurobindo, and H.B. Blavatsky. And when I was done after 2 years, I wrote a book on it, and I was in shock. I was in shock what these masters said on vaccines. And it's not for me to share. It would take way too much time. But if you're really interested in that subject and you have questions about the validity and value of vaccines, because I think certain ones may be very beneficial historically, but there may be many more that are very questionable. So
Yeah,
it's right
I agree.
there.
I invite you all to look into what Steiner said about the vaccines, about what was he knew exactly what was going to happen 100 years after his
Absolutely.
departure.
He was a prophet of the
It's
very highest order.
okay,
And
he's very important for this moment, historical moment, and we all know what's happening. It's about the vaccines. I'm even more radical than you, Duane. It's like, it's a big debate about all this, but yes,
well,
okay, we understand each other. Yeah.
read it, and then you'll see
Right.
that there's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for that. And any additional
Okay.
comments?
Yes, we have a number of comments, and Heliosol, I see your hand, but let me get through some of these comments, okay? Greg, he posted that diagram that you guys all downloaded, but he said perhaps the parallelogram could be considered a more advanced form of the square, and with 4 distinct and varying points, parallelogram is also inclusive of 4 points of view or 4 vehicles of developing inner relationships, like um, in time, the parallelogram in a vector expression takes us into a singular point. Once the merging of the 2 points of the parallelogram merge evolutionary and become an example of a triangle with 3 emerging vehicles.
Well, that was nothing less than profound. And I agree, when you take a square or you take a rectangle, and let's say you have a prototype in front of you and you hold the bottom, but you rack the top, you create a parallelogram. And that now it's not a square, it's a square with 2 triangles, one on each end. And what you just shared is very important, because it may be a cosmic truth. And at the same time, it may be your unique contribution or ability to visualize how what we're sharing here works for you. In other words, just because I say a triangle is composed of 3 equal lines, that doesn't mean it can't be elongated. It can't be stretched. The most important thing we need to learn about energy and force is that it is in motion. And without some visual assistance, it's very hard to pin it down. Okay, excellent. Any additional comments before we Go back on.
Yes, yes, okay. Diana posted the Wikipedia Commons, the snub dodecahedron animation GIF.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's an important contribution.
And Michael Crow posted your Lightweaver page and some of the, an image of some of the things they could get there.
Okay, excellent. Well,
And
good.
then,
Let's go ahead.
okay, Susie says in astrology, the mystic rectangle might be of interest in considering the parallelogram.
Yes, the mystical rectangle. That just saying triangle conjures up a certain image, but the moment you say mystical, you're putting it in a whole different level.
Rectangle.
Yeah, it's actually a rectangle, the mystic rectangle. And it has a number of, it's composed of 2 sextiles and 2 trines, and with the it's basically two axes that are sextile to each other and therefore trine to the other one. So it's a lot of very favorable little tiny aspects in there that build it and make it as important as it is.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
one
the
more.
thing with everything like you're talking about with the dodecahedrons and with the stars and they're little tiny components that make the synergy of the entire thing much more important.
Exactly. And 12s, like in the dodecahedron, which is made up of 12 pentagons, it can be a symbol of so many different things. And in esoteric astrology, if you see all of those 12 zodiacal signs as all nesting within the 12 aspects of the dodecahedron, it gives you a visual sense of unity. And DK constantly affirms this. He goes into exquisite detail about all kinds of different astrological laws and principles, but then he says, you got to step back. You got to see the whole of it organically unfolding. And that is not easy to do, because to get to where you're exploring all these important tidbits of information, you have to use the lower mind powerfully. You have to use it in a new way. And you don't want to violate the integrity of the lower mind, because it's created the direction that's taking you towards the intuition. You just have to learn the creative technique of, okay, the mind can't go any further than this. I'm going to leave it here. I'm not going to destroy it. The lower mind is not the destroyer of the real. That's just a cliche for aspirants and probationers. The mind is the single most important instrument you have, even the lower mind, as you're building this bridge, and then you take off into the intuition. And when you come back, you got the lower mind there to ground it. Because you can trust me on this one. If you travel around on these higher planes and come back and you don't have a good grounding agent, you are going to be in trouble. Okay, one more, and then we're going to go on to some animations.
Okay, well, we have a couple more quick comments, but Helia Soul has had her hand up for a long time. Go ahead, please, Helia Soul.
I just would like to ask a question about the merging of the two spatial objects, because the hedron and the dodecahedron, when they merged, what is there deeper introspect into this process you might have, because it looks to me when you mentioned interface, the interface usually perceived at this time um, as two flat surfaces congruent, and they come together in congruency, and that's interface. Now we just watched with this video animation is the dimensional and dynamic interface, it seems to me. Do you have any more depth on it, how it could be applicable for,
Well,
I would
I
say,
think you've
entire
made a good point.
esoterics? Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, thank
you've
you.
made a very important qualification. And for all of our listeners, that's the fifth ray right there. It's not to say it's not impelled by the fourth ray or the second ray, soul or whatever. That was beautifully articulated. And you're right. I should have used the word uh, perhaps merged.
Oh, so the reason I'm asking, because I explained in my own workshops, webinars, when I was teaching before, I am not, because I am now in the school of uh, where I am right now, listening and watching this. And so I've been kind of like,
Excellent.
and I always was telling the listeners that there is interface between energy fields, between the
Yes.
templates within any system, and everything needs to be communicated. And if it's not working properly. So this interface, dimensional and dynamic, how can we put it in the new, I would say, in the new teaching, because new teachings are coming, right? So, but what would we do in the field with that? What any,
Well,
maybe we can kind of come up with something.
well, I think we are. And I think your comments and some of the comments prior to yours uh, are an attempt to look at this creatively in new and dynamic ways. And I'm of the opinion that this impact of Shambhala that is upon us now, granted, we're not into 2025, but when you understand cycles, that they take a long time to come up to their maximum point. And so we're just almost at the apex of this 2025 download, and
Mm,
we are going to be enticed to look at things differently, and also that the ageless wisdom teachings may not just be a new download of books. In other words,
mm,
oh, 2025, now somebody's going to come out with all these new books. Yes, there'll always be a third aspect of anything that's new, which is the grounded part, but also the tools that we use. I can't tell you how many times Alice Bailey in all of her works stops and says, this is well high impossible to describe the wonder or the beauty of this concept. And she's talking about triangles or the planetary logoi and how they're all connected through these vast cosmic forces. But with the advent of computer graphics and animations in Photoshop and 3D fractals, we can get a better sense of how these energies actually work on the inner planes, and can in turn share them with others with these new tools. And this is what I'm trying to do here, perhaps inadequately, is we're reviewing the same information. And that's why I rely very heavily on the Tibetan's quotations, or Blavatsky or Steiner or someone else. And a lot of what I say is paraphrasing all of those masters, and to try to bridge it, to step it down. It's not just going to be another higher contact with deity. That's a given. we're talking Shambhala here. It's going to be an impact through the seventh ray on the material plane in new and creative ways. And this is where AI, in spite of all of its defects, all of its limitations, how often it's being misused right now, it will be used, as we discussed in other presentations, for the dissemination of the ageless wisdom teachings.
I also
Well, thank you.
believe that this material like this should be already at least introduced to the educational system that is, so revolutionary. It is really, we actually now have a permission to drop the two-dimensional geometry and go into this kind of live, I would
Yes,
say, geometry. It's a next step, obviously.
absolutely. And the next image that we're going to see.
I want to just say thank you very much
Okay.
because
Oh,
it's a
thank
big
you.
eye-opening.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. We appreciate your comments and contribution. Now, this next image is, let's see. I've got something else going on here that I have to minimize. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see a rotating dodecahedron that is more organic. In other words, you may have been to the co-op lately or the Whole Foods, and you were in line and you noticed the broccoli or some other beautifully displayed food had these patterns that we're showing sort of rigidly in animation, but now we're going to see the dodecahedron in motion. My computer is no longer working. I'm clicking the keys and nothing's happening. So let's try it a second time. Oh, here we go. Okay, we're good. This is a dodecahedron, and this is what this looks like in motion. We're having a slight technical difficulty here because this is like a 2-minute. Yeah. The image is rotating and it's organic, and for whatever reason, I don't fully comprehend, it's just jumping. But you get an idea that these beautiful platonic solids are not just confined to the mental plane. You see them everywhere in nature. And you see them in metals. I recently was reading a commentary by NASA that showed that they have discovered from meteorites these little crystalline pieces of glass-like crystals that are so beautifully formed, and they come from outer space. They come from other systems. Okay, and now we're going to go into another animation, and I hope this next animation doesn't do what this one does, but what it is, it's a dodecahedron that's interfaced with the icosahedron. So as you watch it rotate, at one time you're going to see a six-dimensional like figure and then a 5-dimensional figure. And it's similar to what we saw earlier with those fused, those two different polyhedras fused, only this is in rotation and animation. Okay. historically, a lot of the polyhedra have been associated with the masculine for different reasons. And this may be an unfair characterization because what you just viewed is the two polyhedra I just mentioned coming together into one rotating object. And we've given it through Photoshop a soft pastel-y look. And we're rotating it slowly. And we're using, must be Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which to me is the epitome of romance. And it can solicit more of the astral Buddhic on the feminine side. And the next one we're going to watch is very similar, but it has sharper edges, it rotates faster, and it has the qualities of the blue, which is the second ray, and the fourth ray yellow, but it also has this flashing effect. It's in faster motion, and the music is, to me, more on leaning towards the masculine side. But I will let you be the judge of that, and then we're going to open the conversation. And this is an image of it brought down to a point where there's no motion. So you use this as a meditation and see how it feels or how it looks to you compared to the other one. TK shares in his teachings that when two or more energies come into each other's vicinity, crossover, contact, that light flashes forth. In fact, that is what initiation is. It's when two or more energies convene in what appears the same space, and there is a crossover place where they're in the same space, but they're in three different dimensions. In other words, the question that every disciple has to ask themselves is, how do these higher energies work their way down to lower levels? They do it by a constant overshadowing, interpenetration, and descent of what's common in them to what's common into the next lower level. And this can be characterized through vibration, number, color, sound, and geometry. You have to make yourself attractive. This is like cosmic romance. You want to attract the soul's full attention, the master's ashram, and eventually the logos, him, herself, in their high domain. You have to reconstruct, find what you're working with, find where you are on the path, and then keep building, adding to that. It can be geometric structures, it can be color, it can be sound. And I've done a lot of research on the etheric body, and flashing lights, if they're done at a certain sequence under a certain impression, they can be very powerful to bypass the lower mind and go right into the higher regions of the astral, the Buddhic, and the mental. So if you're feeling, I have a term, I call it mental vertigo. And what is that term? Well, it's, imagine you're walking along a boulevard, and or you're on a sidewalk and you're sort of not paying attention, and all of a sudden the sidewalk ends and you're dropping about 6 inches, and it's like, oh wow. There's a moment where you may not know exactly where you are, and people can say with this poor analogy, well, yeah, it's not good. You could get flattened by a runaway garbage truck. However, that is a very creative moment on the mental plane where your normal thinking has been dissipated long enough so that a hierarchical or soul symbol, and that's what you're watching here. I wish I could say I made these symbols. I have no idea who the artist is. And if anybody knows, please let me know, at least on these two that I've just shared, and we'll give them credit, because these I have tweaked for this presentation, but they are utterly profound. And they do stimulate the etheric body, the astral, the mental, and they can even create a bridge into the Buddhic field. Not because I'm some great artist, but simply because they are hierarchical in nature, and I, the little me, has had the privilege of sharing them with all of you. Okay, we're open for discussion. Anybody would like to share anything about the first one versus the second one, or anything that just pops up?
Okay, we have a couple of comments, but let's go to Heliosol, whose hand is up first. Go ahead, Heliosol.
Thank you. I'll just be very quick. That video clip with the multi-dimensional flashing with the light of, almost like light of God, or I don't know, the higher Agni, I don't know. But it also occurred to me as the merge or the pathway or the vehicle of highlighting the matter or merging of the higher agnis into the matter. And I think that's what it showed to us, what you created and or perfected. And this is another one revelation. Thank you.
Excellent. And this is true. God does flash forth, and we have been conditioned primarily through thousands of years of Judo-Christian teachings, which are changing, that God only comes to us under certain conditions, hallowed, sacred conditions. But if we're very seventh ray, we want to make the now, the real, the tangible, the seat you're sitting in, the body you inhabit, to become a vehicle of this sacred flashing forth, and see it in ways right out on the physical, become immersed in it. This is what the new seventh ray is going to be. It's no longer going to be going off somewhere. Yes, hypothetically, theoretically, you do have to leave your common familiar markings, but you only do that so that you can bring down these austere points of contact, and they are very much right around us if we want to pay attention and make the effort. Any additional comments?
Yes, we have a number of chats here, and I skipped over the ones from before because I wanted to
Thank you.
concentrate on the newer. But everybody, we will post the chat, and you'll be able to look at them later. Okay, so Greg says, like the parable of Jesus the Christ, when he says, "When two or more are gathered in His name, there am I," or "there I am." And the keywords focus for Leo from
Beautiful.
Master DK,
Beautiful.
I am that, and that am I.
Yes, and let the lion of God consume the lion of the personality. Yes, excellent, Greg. Thank you so much.
And Magda says in response to that, yes, the I am in German, the ich or ich, I'm sorry, which is the Hebrew letter, should be Christ.
Excellent.
And Jessica says, thank you. That animation brought the teachings from esoteric psychology about the seven kingdoms of nature I'm currently reading. It seems to capture the evolutionary process of those kingdoms from mineral to solar lives.
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
And then
Any,
Greg says, and also these kinds of fusion occur in all dimensions. First, one dimension, two dimension, three dimension, four dimension, and on to the he whom not may be said as the unifying factor of all that is.
absolutely, beautifully, occultly, so exacting and so poetic at the same time. Okay,
And
any
then
additional?
we have a hand up from, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this, Agnieszka. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just would like to share because I got so profound reaction to the second one that like my heart was completely racing, and I got like pulled to this to this cube, and like I felt like a Christ saying, "I'm coming," and it was absolutely like I was shaking. So I wanted to share with you.
Well, that's beautiful. Christ, I'm coming. Because Christ is within us right now, right here. And yes, we want to expand and explore that and share that as many ways as we can. But this is the purpose of group work. This is the purpose, or will be the purpose, of the new art. And DK says, when you can look at art and it causes a stimulation of your inner chakra system or your inner bodies, and you feel heat, you will know you're observing the next stage of Aquarian art. It transforms you. It doesn't just, it goes to your very core. It doesn't stop with just your human imagination, which is a great place to begin, but it subdues you. It seduces you. And it does make your heart race. And this is what I meant about we all have to walk off a number of curbs, and we choose the time and the place. And it can be a little intimidating because you're falling through free space. But you do that enough times and it becomes exhilarating. Yes, no, you're not going to get whacked by a garbage truck. You're not going to get hurt. You're actually falling into the intuition, unconditional love, and a full understanding that you are timeless, spaceless, and exist in all dimensions simultaneously. Any additional comments?
Asha says, thank you very much, Love. So awesome and enlightening. And that
Thank
was
you.
the last comment.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to a few more animations. And what you see in this image is the 7 rays on the far left. And if you have pretty good resolution in your monitor, the 7 subrays that are found on each of those rays. And just as the earlier theosophical societies put emphasis on certain laws, principles, and concepts, the rays were primarily the 7 rays, the 7 planes, the 7 this, and it goes on infinitely. But this next cycle is going to be a lot of emphasis, not just on the planes and the rays, but the subplanes and the sub-rays, because they create a lattice work of connecting links that explains how, to go back to our previous comment, how these higher levels connect with the lower levels. In other words, when you look at this first image on the left, you see it is predominantly all red, ray 1. It's one of the dominant colors of the first ray. Okay, but built into it is all the other colors of all the other rays. So this is how that first ray connects to the second ray, being 2 entirely different ray expressions or planes. You can look at this as the rays or the planes. How does the second ray interface with the first ray? It's got the first ray built into its first subray. And you can go all the way down to the bottom and you'll come to the realization that it's like multiple spider webs, gossamer, transparent, permeable spider webs that are all operating at the same time, and yet they have their distinct identities that are different. But again, through geometry, color, and sound and vibration and number, they can be brought together. Okay, to the right of that, we have picture number 2. I took picture number 1 and I spun it, rotated it in Adobe Photoshop, and that's the same image, only under the impression of something that's rotating. Okay, then we go to the far right and we see the same identical image as 2 and 1, only not only rotated at a higher speed, but you can see how the colors begin to overlap and fuse with each other. It's sort of like a cosmic blender when you're doing up a smoothie and you throw all this stuff in and it looks, oh, there's this, there's that. But the moment you hit the motor, it all begins to twirl. And that is how rays and planes and energies become homogenized. They become one. Because when you study the rays and planes, you're going to get to a point where DK says you've got to step back and see them all as a composite. But that is so hard to do unless you're very, very advanced in visualization, but there it is in number 3. And now, thanks to even more advanced animation techniques, we can see number 3 in motion. And I'm going to skip to that right now. Oh, let's stop this just for a second. Oh, I can't stop it. You're looking at the same identical image that we just analyzed, only in motion. Because the rays and the planes, the soul, the monad, they go through cycles of twisting, sinuous motion. And imagine that the blue are the monadic, they're the monads that come into our second ray solar system first, because it's a system of love wisdom. Why is it historically that the serpent has been used throughout all esoteric traditions as a key to the mysteries? Our solar system is not stationary, and the planets do not revolve around the sun uniformly. It's more like a boat traveling through the water with the wake in front of it. Our solar system is corkscrewing through the universe. All the planets are corkscrewing through their cyclic periods of manifestation and abstraction, and they follow in the wake magnetically, electrically as the sun. And if you see all of these little dots, this twisting, sinuous, cosmic snake made up of the different types of monads. Now, yes, DK says there's only 3 groups of monads in manifestation right now, so we're taking a little liberty here, but there are 7 types of monads, and they come in cyclically according to law. And I just find that just profound. The atom, they've discovered that on atomic levels, the atom is it's characterized by fields, and these fields are in constant motion, and many of them are sinuous. Some rotate one direction, some rotate another. And when you get into subatomic particles, you get the same generic configuration. And that's true of all your bodies. Every one of your bodies is an atom, and that atom has movement, it has geometry, it has all the things that we've discussed. So let's talk a little bit of cosmic fire here, if I can find this. Well, let's jump to this next animation, and then we'll end with cosmic fire. This artist, the fusion of art, which is fourth ray, with technological developments like AI and all kinds of unusual things, is bringing out into humanity a whole new presentation of reality. And this short film was created by this Jay McGowan, Digital Art and Music, and it was created for his master's degree at the University of Dundee. And his idea was to see what music would look like traveling through the air, inspired by the emerging science of cymatics. And cymatics is such an incredible subject. We are going to devote several presentations to that alone. And he says, I used footage of my own music being vibrated through the cymoscope, a machine created by John Stewart Reed that allows the visualization of sound through ultrafine water and used in VFX techniques to interpret and create a holographic 3D version. So I want you to imagine that we are seeing what he musically has composed. Now, the music is not exactly the one that I would use for this part of the presentation, but it's his, and I want him to be fully connected with his images. And when you look at this, I want you to imagine what it would be like if you had a cymoscope that you were sitting in front of and you started to speak from the heart, recite poetry, give a quote by one of the masters, and that cymoscope would take your voice and translate it into images exactly as you're going to see what this gentleman has done with his music and his technical ability. So put your seat belts on, because this is right out of this world. Well, I guess it is out of this world. It doesn't want to come up. Let's move forward another slide. We got it. Excellent. There is music to this. It just takes a few minutes to get into it. Imagine being in a room of co-disciples and there's a circle and each person has a cymoscope. And as they communicate amongst and with each other, the form of their words is right there, multidimensional. For those of you who have done NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and other offshoots of that, could see the unearthiness of it. It's like it just so totally blows my mind, and we're heading in this direction. Okay, we're going to open it up to a few comments, and then we're just going to end with a I think we're going to have the comments after this next. It's a notice. I don't know if let's see. Yeah, I've had a few problems. A few of my slides got ahead of each other, and I have no idea how that happened. But let me just skip through a few of these and see if I can find it. Rose, if you're available, I'd really appreciate it because something is missing here.
I have the presentation open. Do you know what was missing?
I think we have to go. Okay, that's how I'm going to find it. That's exactly right there. It's number 30. Okay. I have had the good fortune to make contact with a young lady by the name of Betty Stockbauer, and she has recently done a book called Considerations on Cosmic Fire, which draws parallels between some cutting edge scientific groups and the ageless wisdom teachings, with particular emphasis on the Tibetans' treatise on cosmic fire. And I wanted to be sure before we get into sharing that we could put that link up. And I don't know if you can see it. It's slide 37, Michael, of 37. And it's, Rose, could you help me with this? Because you may not have it because it's in my notes. Somehow that slide got lost, and I apologize for this.
I have 37 and it has Sanat Kamara.
No, how can I get this up on the into the chat or to Michael?
I'll put it in the chat.
Duane.
She's going to put it in the chat right now, so we're good. Because this is groundbreaking. Okay. A cosmic fire. A lot of what is going on right here today is from cosmic fire, only it's stepped down and paraphrased and truncated. But this lady has, she's got incredible fifth ray and a lot of second ray. And she has just done this incredible book that's made available for free if you just want to follow this link. So we're good. And again, I apologize for the interruption. I try to make these presentations flow as seamless as possible, but this is an exception to the rule and it's well worth.
I'll get it. I have to. Is this it here?
That's it right there. Okay. She has to get it from another source, but it outlines the way of the future, how science and religion are not opposed to each other. The new superhuman physics is going to be the fusion of ancient yogic tradition and quantum levels of exploration with plasma and electricity and magnetism, the electric universe group that we've explored on many Zoom meetings. She goes into in much greater detail than I have. Okay. Now, can you see it? Everybody in the chat, Michael? I got to have confirmation here.
I see complete big picture Substack.
Yeah, it's there. It's there.
Okay, excellent. Is Betty here today?
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Would you like to make a comment? Or add anything to my myopic introduction? Okay. Well, then we'll go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Betty. Go ahead. You got the floor.
My modem and router went out, so I'm on my phone and I don't know how to operate Zoom very well on a phone. So
You're doing well. You're loud and clear.
okay. I thank you greatly for the mention of the book, and I hope it brings a little light to some people. It was a great honor to be able to write it. Anyway, it was a great honor to be able to wander around in all of those beautiful ideas for so long. So I hope you all enjoy it. And I thank you, Duane, for the presentation. This is a whole new field for me. I haven't studied what you're doing, so that will be my next realm of study. And I appreciate the input. I appreciate getting to know you.
Well, thank you.
What you're doing to distribute the book and to distribute the teachings.
Thank you so much.
A very exciting time for all of us, I think.
That's true. And the best is yet to come.
Yeah, let's hope.
And it is a joy and it is a privilege that we all must learn to fully interface with and enjoy. It's not labor. Okay, thank you, Betty, and we'll be in touch. Okay, we're a little beyond our time limit here, so we'll only take 5 minutes to have a few comments if there's any.
We do have some comments. Was there going to be a video?
I think we're going to wrap it up here. Just if there were any comments on the last video.
Marguerite wanted to know what the difference between a clockwise rotation and a counterclockwise rotation. Is there a difference depending on the objective or the purpose?
I would say yes, and it depends on the intent or the context in which it's happening. In other words, you're very familiar, BL, and I'd like you to speak on that subject about astrology going around the chat because you know it better than I.
Well, as a personality, we're going counterclockwise around the wheel. You know, that's the way Aries to Taurus to Gemini, that's counterclockwise. And as a soul, we reorient and we begin to go the other way. But in reality, what's happening is that personality is we start with Aries and then go to Pisces, and we have the hard lessons to learn before we've learned the techniques of Taurus and Gemini and everything. So it's basically the wheel turning in on the wheel, and you feel it more and more as the esoteric influences begin, and you begin to go in that clockwise fashion as opposed to the counterclockwise. Like I said, they're turning in on each other, and that's one of the difficulties between the personality and the soul, is you gain enough soul control that the dweller has to face the angel, the personality has to face the soul.
Yes. And I would add to that, let me, okay. Okay, here's an example right here. This is a diagram straight from Cosmic Fire, and it's all the triangles between the first and fifth initiation. And you'll notice that you have an X or positive, the crown or the thousand petal lotus, and then at the base of the spine, you have a negative dash indicating one is masculine, the other is feminine. Now, to undergo the first initiation, your centers, if they're operating on the three lowest subplanes of, let's say, the physical etheric, they're drawing in energy that is not very evolved. They're dealing with elementals. When you undergo initiation, in other words, you create a triangle between the throat center, the sacral center, the base of the spine, and then back to the throat. What you do is, to undergo the first initiation, you have to reverse those three lower levels of elementals that to the three higher levels of elementals or devas that are rotating in the opposite direction. And the common elementals usually rotate clockwise, and the more advanced elementals and devas usually counterclockwise. However, it depends upon your observation. If you take this chart and you imagined standing behind it and looking at the rotation of the centers, you might see them going in the opposite direction. You swing around from the front, now they're going in the opposite direction of the back. So it's all relative to your point of view. Okay, excellent. Any last comments as we
Yes, we have a number of them. Diana says, can you animate our ray formula in this way? And for example, compare two nations' ray formulas, their soul and personality. For example, USA and Russia.
Yes, that is a profound question, because it alludes to the creation of new and more advanced techniques that have more intimacy of each one of those nations and how they have to interface, remembering in spite of the Ukraine war and all the horrors of what's going on over there, the Tibetan has said via AAB that there will eventually emerge a triangle between the US, Russia, and I think it's Great Britain, and that this will be a healing triangle, and that these three nations will work together to bring about this age of enlightenment through their vivification. And yes, absolutely, the Ray formulas, the Ray schools, yeah, which I have done, not all of them, but a number of them. The next level would be animating them. Excellent idea. Okay, any additional comments?
Asha says the depiction of spiral ascension across multiple dimensions in the eternal moment of now. So inspiring.
And that's exactly what it is. And the fact that you can articulate that indicates that you get it. Now, I understand maybe other people in the group can't articulate it, but they still got it. But it's nice to be able to formulate it, well, to put it into a formulator. When you formulate something, you're putting something into a formula, even if it seems superficial, even if it seems common, it can be a mantra of future things. The idea of multidimensionals, multi-spirals carrying multidimensional lives up or down the spiritual spectrum. Okay, one last one, and then we're going to have to give all the techie people a break.
Okay, well, you have a whole bunch, but Greg says, and wasn't a serpent who offered Eve the apple and in negative effect resulted in fundamental Christianity with its extreme anti-feminine expression in our modern society. But when you look at it from a much more positive, affirming expression of the cosmic serpent offering the apple to Eve, and in so many Western teachings and philosophy, the apple has always been symbolic of knowledge in its most positive expression and application. And for many, the founder of modern science was hit on the head by a falling apple. And out of his revelations, the whole preliminary theoretical expression of the lower mind has emerged with the discovery of gravity as we know it today.
Beautiful. Excellent. And I agree. The feminine historically has taken a lot of abuse, and that is rapidly changing. And this idea of the serpent is really active intelligence. And when you're ignorant and you're given active intelligence, then the masters observe what you do with it. And if you use it wisely, they give you more. If you use it unwisely, and this is the problem with many contemporary churches, they have diminished the feminine to an inferior place. And when you study electrically, magnetically, like looking at this chart, for all of manifestation to come together, the monadic level and the base of the spine at one time were just one holistic organic principle. Because of the desire of some great being, he or she or they separated these two poles and created these secondary tributaries. And you see this in the Book of Life. And all our journey is to tighten all these triangles up, fuse them together, learn their teachings, and then that base of the spine, the great mother, the Kundalini, which is the esoteric part of the feminine, not merely the outer form, which is important, but it will seek its consort. Shakti seeks its consort Shiva. The two merge and become one. And then there is no feminine, masculine. There's no duality. And unfortunately, women have taken a lot of hits on this, but it's changing. It's changing. And when you look at men and women electrically, you cannot fall into those prejudices. You cannot fall into those old cliches that are just numbing and dumbing down what all of us are trying to do. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and the comments and the feedback. And it is truly a joy to spend time with you.